Hey everyone, Portia here, and in this video I'm going to show you how to use Astro.com to pull up your birth chart, as well as how to modify the settings within Astro.com and some cool features that I personally like within this website. So I'm going to go ahead and start and jump right into it. I'm going to go share my screen. And so I really wanted to do this for you guys or show you how to do this because a lot of you have started looking at my astrology lessons, and I just want us to be on the same page in regard to how we look at the chart and what exactly in the chart are we looking at, what house system we're using. And so here is Astro.com's website. And when you're using this website, I would suggest, if you're going to be continuously looking at your chart, looking at the chart of others, I would suggest starting an account with Astro.com. It's free. I think they'll prompt you anyways to start an account, but I think My Astro, or it might say like login, and then you can create your account from there. And with that account, you can save any birth info you enter, so you don't have to put it in every single time. Okay, and so this is Astro.com. This is like the best astrology website, in my opinion, to really get your birth chart. And there's so many things on this website that you can kind of look into. They do horoscopes and things of that nature. So, but I want to show you guys working with the birth chart. And so we're going to go to free horoscope here. You can click on that, or you can choose something in the drop down section. So I tend to choose the extended chart selection, and you're going to see why. Okay, and so right here, I want to show you, this is the extended chart selection, like info settings. But before we do that, let's go ahead and I'll show you how to add a new person or add your birth info. So you're going to go to add a new person. And we're going to use George Carlin because I just have been watching a lot of his YouTube and he's awesome. It's like my spirit animal at the moment. So it's the best. Carlin. And so I put the name in and they ask you for gender. And I think this is primarily if you get interpretations done through the website, because if you just hit event or other, that's not, applicable. If the chart interpretation through the website. So totally up to you. I'm going to put Mel for George Carlin, and then putting in the date and the birthday info. So May 12th. Let's see, where's May? May 12th, 1937. Oops, 1037. Wow, I'm really old. He was born at 11:45 a.m. And he was born in Manhattan, New York. So New York, New York. And, they'll give you, there's so many different options. They'll give you a bunch, prompt you. Okay, and then you hit continue. So it's going to bring us back to the settings page. So before you look at that chart, some things I would suggest modifying, or I just want to go through the individual parts. Here we have the chart type. So by default, I believe it's going to be on natal chart wheel. This is what you're going to look at to actually see your birth chart. Once you start getting into the more advanced chart interpretations and different techniques, then you can go here to get your synastry chart. So right now I have George Carlin and Alan Watts. Like, you could do a synastry chart between those two. And you can just pick, obviously, like horoscope 4 and then partner. And then you have your natal chart and transits, as well as like progress charts, solar return, things of that nature. But that's more for the advanced chart interpretation. If you just want to look at your birth chart, I would keep it on natal chart wheel. The chart drawing style is you use the web default. I've never changed that. And then this is an important one, is the start date. So we look at, this is important in regard to looking at transits or your solar return chart. If you're comparing two different charts, you want to make sure this date is for the date you would like. So if you want to look at transits for a different day with your own birth chart, you could literally change this to September 25th, like 2000 or something like that. But we're going to keep it at today, looking at the transits for today, I'll show you guys how to turn the transits on and what that looks like. So then the house system is another important setting. So this is probably the most important setting and why I wanted to show this to you guys. So just to make sure we're all on the same page if you're learning with me. So when you set up an Astro.com account, this house system by default, what they're going to have here is Placidus. This is going to be the default. And so this is not the house system that I use. I've used it before, but what I'm using when I'm teaching Hellenistic astrology, I will be using whole signs house system, which is right here, whole signs house system. And the reason why I use this is because, one, this is what they were using in ancient astrology and that Hellenistic perspective of astrology. And personally, when I started using whole signs house system, it made things a lot more simple. It was a lot more simple. It was more simplified for me. And so this is the system that I'm using at the time. I've used Placidus, I've used Porphyry. Those are considered to be quadrant house systems. And I definitely feel that they're relevant in some way. So look at the house systems as like a lens of how you're looking at the chart. So what's your intention? If you're working within the Hellenistic perspective, you know, let's use the system that they use. If I'm doing evolutionary astrology or looking at past life astrology readings, I'm going to use Porphyry, and that's my own preference. But that's if you're going to use looking at the different perspectives is basically the house system that you want to use. Most of us, I started out using Placidus because I started out using Astro.com and that was the default, and I didn't understand house systems. So I'll do a video later on what that different house system means. But I just wanted to let you know, if you are working with me or you're looking at any of my astrology videos, this is the system that I'm using unless I say otherwise. And also for the Zodiac perspective, I use the tropical Zodiac. Some people use sidereal. This is going to be the default, but you might want to check because I haven't, I've been using this for a long time. I've had my settings on here for a long time. And so that is what you want to use, is the tropical Zodiac from a geocentric perspective. So this is all this particular perspective we're working with. Okay. And so the standard drawing, this is basically saying that I have saved my settings as the default setting. And I'll show you how to do that because you do that within the chart. And then here, the reference place is what you want to have for basically your home base. As far as when you're looking at transits, what is that point of reference? If you are doing a chart for someone else, like say if you're an astrologer and you're reading charts for, say, you're in Syracuse, New York, but you're reading a chart for someone in Tacoma Park, Maryland, then you're going to want to look and see what the transits are, where things are in Tacoma Park, Maryland, referencing that place. So if you're doing a reading, just go in and modify this data and then go to your chart go look at the chart from there and pull up the transits, and it'll be relative to that reference point. So make sure you always change it back. So when you're looking at your own chart and looking at transits, this is important. Also, when you're doing more advanced chart interpretations like solar return, you're going to want to change the reference place to where you're going to be on your solar return. So just to give you a heads up. And this is to reset, if you need to the Astro default settings of the website. All right, and so here are some fun add-ons. We have the option of the North Node. So I definitely work with the lunar nodes. The true node is what I use, and the true node is that raw data. It is the actual point of your North Node, which the North Node is essentially the path in which the moon's path crosses the path of, the sun, essentially the ecliptic plane. So that's that point, that intersection point, which is really important. And so when you're looking at emotional evolution, so you want to have that marked. And the mean node, the difference between the true and the mean is basically just an average of what's going on at that time around that North Node. But I like working personally with raw data So I'm going to want that point where it was, you know, before it got smooth over. And then the descending node is just the south node. And so I have that checked too, because I show the north and the south node on the charts. If you don't have this checked, or say if you're not using astro.com and it's not an option, the south node is always opposite the north node in sign and in house, and they're the same degree. So I will show you that too on the chart. Okay, and then these are a bunch of different other traditional astrology options that we're not even going to touch because we're not there yet. But with here, I tend to have the aspect lines. So I have aspects listed or shown from the lunar node and for the new lunar node and eclipse. So aspects being made to those. And within the chart, I tend to check draw no aspect lines, and I'm going to show you why. So I'm going to uncheck this because I believe the default is with it unchecked. And so I personally don't like looking at the chart with all the aspect lines because I just get really, it's just distracting. I'm a visual person, and when I'm looking at the chart, I take in, like, I look at what pulls my eyes in first, and I have my different places that I look at. But with the aspect lines, and I'll show you, they just tend to jump out at you. And so it can be kind of confusing. It could kind of be overwhelming if you're just learning astrology and just learning how to actually look at the chart. And so I'm going to start, and I'm going to show you what that looks like with the aspect lines drawn in, and then I'm going to show you when it's not. So if you're just getting started, I would suggest to turn the aspect lines off. And when you get into learning aspects, you can turn them on, or I personally, I can kind of figure it out without having the lines there, but then you can see with the lines there, you can see some really cool geometric shapes within the chart. But okay, and so finally here we have some additional objects. So this is basically when you want to start adding in the asteroids or any kind of important points within the chart. So right now I have Chiron selected. I have the part of fortune, which is that fate marker, and you can get Lilith here, you can get Ceres, Juno, all of these different asteroids if it's not listed here. Oh, and you can also, you can choose more than one if you just hold down the command or probably control if you're on a PC. You know how you can select multiple choices in that way. And so if what you're looking for is not listed here, you can manually enter the catalog number of what you're looking for. So I used to have Lucifer, that asteroid, listed and shown within the charts that I was looking at. And so I know that's one of them that I would have to manually enter. And you can also look at the asteroid name and list, or looking at fixed stars and hypothetical planets. This website is awesome. But yeah, so you can do that manually, but that's, like I said, that's probably when you're getting more into the advanced chart interpretation. So I will show you how to do that when that time comes. So now that we have our settings already ready to go, we have George Carlin selected. We're going to click here to show the chart. All right, so here's the birth chart. So here is where you want to save your default setting. So I'm just going to save that. And right now, funny enough, my default is going to include these lines. So I'm going to change that later. But here, so the method that you're using in this chart drawing has been saved as your personal default setting. So everything that I just showed you how to do, once you save that default setting, you don't have to manipulate, you don't have to change that at all unless you want to change something about it. But you don't have to go through every single time and choose the house system and choose what asteroids you want to work with and thus forth, right? Okay. And so here's the birth info here. I would always double check that to make sure that's accurate. This tells you what house system you're using, your sun sign, your rising sign, which is also known as the ascendant. This is George Carlin's chart. So he's a Taurus sun and a Leo ascendant. Here, they give you a breakdown of the moon, like the planets, moon, and the nodes, and whatever else you choose. Like I said, I chose Chiron, part of fortune. They give you this breakdown here of what signs they're in. You know, you see it in the chart, but then you get this little legend here too. And then these little R's here, by the way, means that the planets were retrograde when he was born. So he was born under Mercury retrograde, which kind of makes sense. He's very vocal and very against like status quo in within the information that he's giving. If you ever watch his stand-up. So in Mercury, any retrograde planets, they're loud. They're really like the frequency is a lot more intense because we're closer to, that planet is closer to Earth when it's in its retrograde or part of its orbit. Yeah, also have Mars retrograde too in Sag. So there's that. That also Neptune retrograde. Okay, and so here, this is showing the aspects. But you don't have to, if you are just learning how to read the chart, I would not even worry about this. Okay, so here's the actual chart. And like I said, these are all of the lines. These are the aspect lines, which are basically the interactions that you can see. Pluto here is essentially in opposition to Jupiter. So this might be helpful for you. If this is helpful for you to see those lines and get that visual, then use it. If it's not helpful for you, I would recommend turning it off. So I'm going to go back to chart selection here to turn that off. So let's go ahead down to aspects, and I'm going to hit draw no aspect lines. And so then I'm going to click here. Okay. And so boom, no aspect lines. I'm going to go ahead and save this setting because this is what I tend to use. And boom, here we have it. It looks a lot cleaner. You don't have those lines jumping out at you. And when you're ready to dive into the aspects, then you can turn those on or figure out how to look at them without the lines, okay? And so this is whole house system. So whole house system is very clean, literally, or I'm sorry, whole sign house system. Literally the whole sign is that house. It rules that house. There's essentially no cusp, although you can say, you know, Leo is the cusp ruler of the first house. You don't really need to say that when you're using whole sign house. You can say Leo is the ruler of the first whole sign house, and people know that you're using whole sign house system. Okay, and so this is the ascendant here. This is that ascendant line. So you can still get an idea of like, okay, where exactly is that rising sign? Right? What degree is George Carlin's rising? And so you would get here, it's at 14 degrees of the ascendant, and this little 32 here, these little numbers, smaller in size, are the arc minutes. So you probably don't really have to worry about that unless you're really getting into the depths of the chart. Okay, so I just want to show you the difference between the whole signs house system and the Placidus, just so you can get a visual. So like I said, whole sign house system, the signs are literally within the whole house. So let's go back to chart selection, and I'm going to use Placidus because that is usually the default of what people use. So Placidus house system. I'm not going to save it because I don't want that to be my default, but as you can see, so the cusp of that ascendant, the rising sign, starts that first house. So a portion of Leo is in the first house, a portion of Leo is in the 12th house. So the way I learned is that you still read the first house as Leo because that's where the line starts. So this can get a little bit more complicated, especially you have some houses that are bigger than the other. You know, you have, yeah, and it'll show you just here with the MC, it's going to start, it's not the same, the house sizes aren't equal, which is not a big deal, but you kind of just want to, when you're using a house system, it's good to have a reason or some kind of conceptual understanding of why you're using this particular house system. So with this one, literally it's the most popular because it's Astro.com's default. And it's one of the newer, I believe, more modern house systems. So I could be wrong about that, but it's more modern than whole sign house system. So we're going to go back to whole sign house system. And so yes, house system here, select that. Where are we? Whole sign. And boom, we're back. And so you can see how clear this is. All right. And one other thing I wanted to show, oh yeah, two other things. So now we have our chart that we're looking at. This is George Carlin's birth chart. We have the planets here, the glyphs of the planets, the nodes, the part of fortune. The MC is an important marker, and the ascendant is an important marker. And so one of the things, if you want to look at transits, so the transits are where these planets are at the moment within the tropical zodiac. So you hit that with transit button. Hopefully you guys saw that. I did that really quickly. And so now here is the chart, and then you have these green glyphs on the outside that are the current transit. So right now we're in Mars retrograde in Aries. So this is activating, it's transiting his 9th house that Aries rules, his whole sign 9th house. And then here we have all this Capricorn energy going on with Saturn, Pluto. The moon is currently in Capricorn at this moment. The moon is right on, let's see, 21 degrees. Oh no, it's pretty close to his Jupiter. So 25 degrees. So here's where the transits are. And the legend is showing you this in comparison. So moon 25, the transit's 25 degrees of Capricorn. And then let's see, I was looking at his Jupiter because that's in Capricorn. So 27 degrees of Capricorn. So the moon is 2 degrees from his Capricorn. So if you were doing a reading for George Carlin, that'd be like a really good thing to kind of bring up, just feeling he might feel a little bit more emotionally receptive or like open to, you know, if you think about Capricorn and having some kind of limitations to this energy of feeling like some kind of growth in like service, or just like it could be also feeling like trapped within your body, like a physical kind of energy. That moon coming through, aspecting that Jupiter could come out as feeling this emotional pull to expand, or feeling some kind of connected, like getting some kind of emotional, intuitive energy from the cosmos to, you know, awaken your consciousness in regard to how you are a service, or, you know, some kind of health and wellness aspect. So not to get too deep into it, but you can see how you can look at the transits and see how that is activating your chart. Okay, one other thing I wanted to show you is, and I'm going to show you from the software that I use just to give you an idea, because I just did a video on planets and astrology. So I'm going to share different screen. So I just did a video on planets and astrology, and we talked about the difference between night and day births and why they're significant. And so I wanted to show you how to determine that. So you're going to look at the ascendant line here. So you can see this is the ascendant in Leo. This is George Carlin's chart. And so this is essentially the horizon line. This is what's rising, and this is what's setting, which is the descendant. And in the Astro.com, there's no marker for descendant, although there might be. I just really need to look for it. But I tend to, it's always going to be the opposite degree and sign and house of the ascendant. So here we have 14 degrees of Leo is the ascendant. And so the descendant, that setting side, is going to be 14 degrees of Aquarius. And so we are going to, in order to determine, say if you're born around sunset, you're going to look to see, or sunset or sunrise, which this is probably like when you're trying to figure out, are you a day or night birth? Whenever if the sun is below the horizon, below this line, then you're born at night. So this is essentially the lower part of the hemisphere. This is the nighttime, and this is above the hemisphere. So you see George Carlin's sun is here above that horizon line. So he's a day birth. And so I just want to show you what it looks like. Let's move time backwards. And so this is when it gets kind of tricky, because the time here is 5:45 a.m. I kind of changed the time backwards just to give you an example. So 5:45 a.m., you know, it's hard to know, okay, was the sun was about to rise? Was it over the horizon? Was it not? Like, I don't know if I'm a day or night birth. So then looking at the chart here, you see that the ascendant is literally 20 degrees of Taurus, and the sun is right underneath the ascendant, which is 20 to 21 degrees of Taurus. So this is technically a night birth. But I would look at it from when you're looking at the reasons why, what kind of stands out more in regard to night or day birth. I would tend to look at both to see how they would play a role, because it's so close to the horizon. And also, people's birth times usually are estimated or rounded up or down to that, 5:45, 11:50, something like that, says the exact time. So that exact time really makes a big difference when you have these, like even Mercury up here, 19 degrees of Taurus. It makes a really big difference when you know the exact time, if you have planets or the sun or the moon this close to the ascendant. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. And so if you have any questions, comments, definitely leave them below. I am currently offering mentorships. If you want a one-on-one mentorship, we can look and answer your questions in regard to any astrology things that you have come up. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.